Alright, Jazzy, I'm going to show you how to make a quick game using JazzyEngine just so you can see how easy it is. So first thing we're going to need is we need a new class to start running our game. So I'll go ahead and call this game Jazzy Demo. And we're going to have to add a main method. This is how Java knows where our program will execute. In order to use JazzyEngine, we need a class that's going to use our engine. So we'll make our Jazzy Demo game here extend JazzyEngine. So once we get here, we should be good to go. And what we'll need to do is add a constructor for this object. So that way, when we say we want to go ahead and create an instance of our Jazzy Demo, we're going to set some settings in our engine as far as the game name, and we'll just call this Jazzy Demo for now. The screen width, which will be 480 pixels by 360 pixels. And now what we'll do, this is the main method that will be called. So when our program launches, you've got to tell it here to start our game. So now what we'll do is we'll say Jazzy Demo. We'll call this game. It's going to be equal to new Jazzy Demo. So let's go ahead and create a new instance of our game. And then once we have our game, we'll just tell it to start. And one more thing we'll need for our game is we're going to have to tell it how to start up. So we'll go ahead and add this method. This method will be called once our game engine has finished loading up. It will then tell the game that it needs to start running. So this is where we'll do things like load resources and whatnot, and also load our first level. So I'll just go ahead and run this real quick. We will see we do go ahead and get our window for our game with our specified size, and we have our title set up here. So it's time to start making our game do something. So in this startup method, what we're going to do is we're going to get this thing called a scene manager. And the scene is basically think of it as like a level inside of a game. It's where you can plot all the different objects you want to exist in your world and you want to interact with. We're using what's called a scene and not less like a level, because when you have things like a menu or whatever, like a main menu screen, that doesn't necessarily feel like a level. So it's just another name that people use instead that's not kind of just tied to that level. So we'll go ahead and we'll tell it to make a new instance of a level 1, which we don't have a class called level 1 yet, so let's go ahead and make that. So let's go ahead and make a new class and call this level 1. And since we need to make a scene, we'll have this class extend Jazzy Scene. Oops, if I can spell. Jazzy Scene. And a scene in JazzyEngine is going to need one method called setup. So once this level is loaded, we're going to have to basically tell it how we want to set up the scene. So here we'll add all the things such as our images, our backgrounds, our buttons, all that kind of stuff like that. So let's go ahead and start spicing up our scene here. And let's go ahead and add a background using Jazzy Image. And then once we have this background, let's go ahead and add that. So now that we have our background added, we can start using it. So let's go ahead and set our image for our background, so that way we have something to look at. So let's go ahead and we'll generate an image real quick, just to make this easy. Why can't I spell image? To make things easier. And since we don't want to load this from a file right now, we can just use this handy class called Jazzy Image Generator. We'll tell it to generate a square of size 480 by 360 with the color of blue. Let's use blue. So what this will do is just generate a square image with these dimensions, and this will be the dimensions of our game window, so our background will take up our entire screen. So now we should be able to just save this and run, and we'll see now our level has been loaded and our background has been added. So next, let's go ahead and add some text to this screen. So an easy way to do that is we can have this Jazzy text box. So we can make a text box here. Oops. And now with this text box, we can go ahead and add that to our scene as well. And then now we can start using this text box. Let's go ahead and set the text of this text box to just output the level name. So we'll just say level 1. So now if we go ahead and rerun our game, we'll see our text also now displaying on our screen. So another common thing you want to do with making a game is we're going to need a player, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go make a new class, and we'll call this class player. The player will be extending a class called JazzyEngine. And what an entity is, it's the objects that we're interacting with in our scene. So I'm going to go ahead and implement a couple of methods real quick. When we have an entity, we need to tell it how to set up and kind of essentially initialize that entity. So we have things like a player or a bullet. Once we spawn a bullet, we're going to do things like set its image to see what a bullet looks like. Set velocity, stuff like that. So this is where we'll do all that. So in order to give our player something to look like, we'll access its sprite, and then we'll set its image, and we'll use our Jazzy image generator again, because we don't have images right now to load from our file system, so we'll use the generate circle, give it a radius of 20, and we'll make this color green, so our player will be green. So now we have something that we can use to identify our player on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now we can go ahead and add our player to our game. So we'll go ahead and do player is equal to a new player. And then we'll add the player to the game. And then we'll simply set the player's position to 40 by 40. This will just offset it so we're just not displaying directly on top of our text box. So we go ahead and run our game. We see our player, a text box in our background, but now we should add some functionality to our player, right? Because just sitting there it's not helpful. So we're going to close this out, and what we're going to do here is we're going to use this method called update, and this is where every game frame, so every frame a second during the second, this is what's going to update for our object. So this is where we're going to put our movement code. So we'll need some input, and so we'll need a keyboard. Where we'll get that from is we'll just use it from the default keyboard from JazzyEngine, and we'll tell it to go get the keyboard. And so here we can make an if statement. So we're going to say if keyboard is held, we'll say Jazzy key, and virtual key, and we'll say right. So that way if the right key is being held, we'll tell the player that we want to move 2 pixels to the right and 0 pixels on the y-axis. And then we're just going to go ahead and copy this and do the same thing in the different directions. So that way if we're holding left, we will move 2 pixels in the negative x direction. And if we are holding the up key, we will move 0 on the x-axis and negative 2 on the y-axis. And likewise, when we're moving down, we'll move 0 pixels in the x-axis and 2 pixels down. So now if we go ahead and run that, you'll see we'll be able to move now a player around on the screen. And that's just how easy it is to make a game in JazzyEngine and get started. Yeah.